Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz, back from a long hiatus, which probably doesn't mean anything because we kept putting episodes in the feed. But I have not talked in over a month here to my good pal John Bernhard.
Hey,
John, so good to see you again. I'm back here with old Johnny B.
Happy Oppenheimer to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Here to talk about Bobby Ops,
Bobby
as played by Silly M in a film by Chrissy No.
Yeah. It's part of the Nolan-oscopy. Remember that? We're still ongoing, every couple years. You got to do one.
That's true. As the filmmaker ages, it's more important to stay regular in these checkups. And to help us do this high quality excavating, we have brought back returning guest, Mr. Thor Klippert, Tory Clips.
Happy to be here.
I don't know what I'm doing here or how long I can maintain this. There's a big long cast of people.
Actually, that's a new one. I have not gotten any clips before. That is a new one.
Tory Clips is kind of cool sounding, really. I mean, it sounds appropriately Scandinavian for sure. No, that Thor Klippert is one of the harbingers of Ragnarok.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I guess I was doing sort of an Italian thing. Tory Klippert over here, but no, Thor Eclipse. Yes, that is.
Fenrir the wolf will eat the sun, and we can all get started.
Yeah, well,
we are here to talk about the Destroyer of Worlds, a Destroyer of Worlds.
Indeed.
Yes. Our own nuclear age Ragnarok. Oh. Oppenheimer.
Yeah, big sensation. Did you guys see this in the full-blown IMAX, whatever, 40X? They didn't do 40X for this one, did they?
No. Well, who knows? Maybe
I
they
don't
did.
think so.
But no, I saw this at my local theater. I wish I had seen it in IMAX. Seems like that was the way to go. Seems like it was pretty cool there. It was pretty cool without it, to be honest. But yeah, which is odd for a talkie biopic. And yet somehow it's one of the best sound design films of the year. Maybe the best. Yeah.
Yep. And
I did 70 millimeter at the Grand Lake in Oakland, but not IMAX style, just 70 millimeter film.
Yeah, I did 70 millimeter as well with none of the bells and whistles. I'm on record as loving the 40X experience, but I heard it was kind of in poor taste when they splashed water on your face during the Gene Tatlock suicide sequence.
Oh dear.
I guess they'd have to do that, right?
At least the chair doesn't push down.
You're looking for like we need some sort of engagement. When are we going to get our water effects in? Oh, well, definitely the Gene Tatlock suicide.
Yeah, if you're the 40X engineer, you don't feel good about it, but you're like, I have to earn my role here. Like,
they're paying for an experience. Yes, of course,
exactly.
My favorite 40X experience was in Dune, where anytime there was a knife fight, the chair would actually punch you in the kidneys, just a little located.
Yeah, the kidney punches are one that I think they should reconsider.
Yeah, I had that for John Wick too, which is every time a gun went off, you got a kidney punch, and that sucked. That was the worst one.
Wow,
that was a problem.
I mean, if there's any movie that I guess it's more okay to be like rabbit punching audiences in the kidneys, it's probably a John Wick series, but
I'm sure that was the logic. Yes,
we're far afield from the Oppenheimer experience here, and it's a big, long, chunky movie that we probably need to actually drill down on at some point. I guess let's start the 10,000 foot level. How do you guys like this? Oppenheimer, any good?
I think this is one of the best films that Christopher Nolan has made. I had a blast with this, to be honest. This would be high in my rankings. Bit of a surprise, as I usually do not like a biopic, and this ended up being more of a biopic than I expected it to be. Frankly, I thought it would be hyper focused on the building of the bomb, but no, this is the events before and after. Not quite cradle to the grave, but all the big events of Oppenheimer's life are recreated here. There are Nolan touches to make it feel a little less linear, of course, but at the same time, he pretty much plays it straight. He just finds a really, really good thematic hook, does all his cool tricks. They all work this time. For some reason, during when we were talking all about Nolan, I was bitching about sound design the whole time and the mixes, but this one I thought was exceptional. This sounded great to me. I caught it all. I had a blast with this, so to speak. It's really good. That's my take.
I felt that we still had the head in the bucket sound a lot of the time with the voices. Downey came through, I think, just because he has the sort of voice that cuts through. He's got that baritone. But there was a little for me still.
There was a couple of those moments for me early on. I felt like I didn't notice it too much later on. I thought Damon was always pretty clear too.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the early going, there's once or twice where I had some trouble with that sound mix. And, it's the thing, the Nolan thing of like, well, why would you make that line hard to hear? Like, like it's not that there's something else that interesting going on. But yeah, I mean, this is certainly a good movie. It's got some incredible sequences, and I would certainly put it in the top half of the Nolan rankings. I don't know if I'd go that much higher right now, but it does have, I feel like it's got more room to grow than some of the others, because the stuff I bumped on with it are sort of like the odd structure of it and how it's sort of three different movies. And I think maybe going back to it and understanding a little better what those three distinct movies are, it might hang together better on a rewatch, but it's just going to be a while before I have 3 hours to do that.
Yeah. That's one thing. Yeah.
And I think also for me, like doing the Nolan-oscopy, maybe I was a little Nolaned out, and I'm still a little ruined on some Nolanisms, because I did feel like, I mean, John, I'm with you that biopic is not typically a genre of film that I enjoy. I found myself sort of perversely wishing at times that like this was more of a straightforward biopic, because I felt like the Nolanistic non-linear we're bouncing around the time stuff detracted more from this than it added. Like I think maybe if you had just gone through this, there's a very compelling story here, that if we had just that jumping around in time and adding on this social network dual legal hearing structure to it, maybe took away from more than it added from me, was my initial read.
I mean, I'm surprised he included it.
There's something to be said for trusting the audience to remember something that happened half an hour ago, instead of saying, come back to this, circle back to this, circle back to this. Mm-hmm. I think the reason that Downey's big monologue at the end of the movie has the impact it does is because it's the rare moment in the movie where an actor gets to perform a scene straight through. Yeah, I'm like, okay, we were getting into that, but now we're back in Berkeley. We were getting into that, now we're back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just it took me a while to lock down the timeline.
It wouldn't have killed him to put a title on screen saying it's 1954, it's 1959, it's 1942.
It might have killed Christopher Nolan to do that, actually.
Yeah, it could have given him an aneurysm. I mean, he put subtitles up there. It's fusion and fission, but you can't put a year on there. I guess just maybe the movie was presuming that I had a greater level of familiarity with the ups and downs of Robert Oppenheimer's public persona in the post-bomb era than I did. But maybe there's also some confusion of black and white generally denotes flashback, but in this case, it's the farthest forward timeline. It is a flash forward almost from sort of the main body of the action here.
I kind of thought of that as the Robert Downey Jr. story. Like when we were black and white, it was Robert Downey Jr.'s time. And I knew that to be later because he's talking about Oppenheimer having done what he did and then falling from grace and it being his fault. And it's still somehow a surprise when you find out he's the bad guy.
No, I mean, the confusing thing about that timeline in that case is that you're right. Black and white denotes we're seeing things from Downey's perspective, which mostly means we're seeing them at the end of the timeline. But there's also the setup period where we're seeing him like offer Oppenheimer the job at Princeton.
Right.
Oppenheimer rejects that. And that is sort of the impetus for all of Downey's mustache twirling to come.
Well, that's because black and white is tied to character, not the timeline. That is the Downey perspective. As opposed to,
but that threw me considerably because it took me a while to realize that that black and white scene was taking place before the color scenes of Oppenheimer, quote unquote, on trial. That's not really a trial, and that threw me considerably because I was trying to piece that together. And there's a lot of talk about how Oppenheimer has sort of fallen from grace. I'm like, but did he though? If he's still being offered like emeritus positions at Princeton after he was drummed out,
and getting national honors in France and national honors in England, which is not in the movie. I mean, he had a pretty good 5 years there, and really the his star only rose. He just didn't have political power.
Right.
Yeah, that's fudgy. Like, what is being won or lost by these guys is I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
That's my biggest issue with the movie is I don't feel like it establishes what is at stake in these hearings. Like, I mean, I could tell you, I could give you a description of what is being decided there, but what is actually at stake for these characters? Like, are their careers really over? Are their livelihoods ruined?
If he
I kind of presumed
security clearance, is that big a deal? Because he's not actively working on the bomb, right?
I mean,
anymore.
I mean, after losing the Secretary of Commerce nomination, Strauss's political career was essentially over. That part is true.
Yeah, I found that out after the movie and was shocked by it because my presumption was, okay, they're presenting this as this was a giant, defeat for him. But like, I bet if I look up Louis Strauss, I'm going to find out that he was, serving in the Reagan cabinet when he was 93,
sure,
and was like
something
just
in the
fine.
Private sector.
But that's not really true. And then I also kind of thought that the movie portrayed losing a security clearance as and his celebrity, I guess, becoming sort of
not on Time magazine,
a villain in America. That was a bigger blow to Oppenheimer when it kind of turns out that he was independently wealthy regardless, still had his choice of where he wanted to go anywhere. It's just that he felt personally wounded that subsequent administrations 15 years after he built the bomb were not giving him carte blanche to decide what they did with the bomb. And I'm like, well, come on, guy.
I mean, you knew that when you did.
How naive are you?
You have monologues about how that wouldn't happen when you were building it, Yeah. Okay, so here's my take on this. I think, and this is something I bitched about a lot when we were doing Nolan, I think this is maybe the best example of him doing his you don't really need to know the details storytelling kind of thing. Where he's like the last hour of this show is like bureaucratic hearings pitched at the level of like WWE wrestling, it's like, oh no, I can't believe Louis Strauss was a bad guy the whole time. I don't know. Here comes Rami Malek. He's coming from the, and it's that kind of thing. And, like you get, oh, they won or they lost the court hearing, but yeah, it doesn't really get a sense of what that matters. But in the sense of the story being told, the narrative of Oppenheimer is like, I claimed a scalp, or, oh no, I've lost everything. And I couldn't tell you what it meant or exactly, but I was emotionally there with it as it was happening because it was pitched in such a way that it felt very cinematic, very, very pure storytelling, just narrative propulsion from these seasoned performers.
I mean, maybe not even storytelling, just a visceral experience.
Yeah, and that's why that last hour worked so well for me. I thought it was very entertaining, and I knew nothing about Oppenheimer historically, and so I was kind of walking into this pretty cold, beyond just being like, well, what I knew from the epic rap battle that he's in with Thanos. Basically, that's as much as I knew about Oppenheimer going in. And so, yeah, I would say I'm not an expert on him now because of the film Oppenheimer, but I had a strong experience with it in the theater watching it at the time. I don't know. I've almost talked myself out of that being a compelling argument, but it is fun. It's fun cinema to watch that last hour. Even the big Sorkin speeches I was into. Like Alden Ehrenreich's, really gives it to Strauss at the end there. That doesn't ring true, but it's fun to watch him do it.
That's I guess that's where a lot of my criticisms are clustered. I do feel like, I don't know, it feels too early to be jumping into Rami Malek at this point, but like that character should have been way more involved somewhere earlier on. I know this probably goes against everything in Nolan's character too, but like you could make that a composite character probably for the purposes of cinema. Also,
mix him up with Richard Feynman. I mean, Feynman's barely in the thing, and he's one of the most interesting guys.
Right. And here's a hot take to throw out to you guys. Hey, Rami Malek, are we sure he's actually good?
No, we're not. Not sure.
Okay. He was really good on Mr. Robot, but it turns out maybe that's the only performance he gives from what I've seen. I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody. You cannot.
Yeah, I kind of refuse to see Bohemian Rhapsody.
You cannot pay me to watch a music biopic with a gun to my
Yeah, that's not
he really was badly served by the James Bond experience too.
He didn't come out of that looking great. No, not a great Bond villain. No. I like that movie, but he's not great in it. He's. I'm not. I feel like in the right role, he could be fine. It seems crazy he's not been like a Marvel villain at this point. He seems well suited to that. That sort of thing. I feel like he's a broad performer, and could be well used in.
Well, it's all about the eyes
and the teeth. God, make him a Mr. Sinister or whatever. He'll be fine. So I wouldn't like write him off, but I'm not eager to see his next starring role, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, if Fincher wants to make him a serial killer next time he goes back to that well, like, great, fine. I could buy that too. And look, I guess he's well cast in as much as if you have this, I think, sort of badly done role, but if you're doing it in this way where you just need the audience to clock this guy's presence, even though he's going to say nothing except for, it's 2:30. Like, where he's going to have one line and then show up an hour later and we need to remember him. Okay. You'll remember his crazy bug eyes and all that. Like, and you clock, like, why is he on this? But
I mean, yeah, that is a thing. I don't really buy his speech at the end as a real finisher move. In any context other than WWE, like coming in from the top rope kind of style. They're like, oh, he saved the day kind of thing. Yeah. Like beyond that, no, I don't know what he's up about. I don't know why what he's saying there would matter to a congressional hearing. Maybe that's just because of how they've been going lately. Strauss was kind of a petty bitch, just small potatoes compared to what we're seeing every day nowadays. So, maybe that plays into that, but
no, I think it absolutely does for me anyway. And it's something that was definitely in the air by the time Nolan was making this. So I'm kind of surprised he didn't account for it a little more, that this is like, we are at a place now. I mean, look, it's a period piece. You want to portray part of what about things were like in the 50s and 60s, that the scientific community was more highly respected, carried more clout in these political circles. I think you need to do more work to establish that sort of environment whereas in 2023, we expect a scientist going into a congressional hearing to mostly be there to have water balloons thrown at him. Like, so
yeah,
we're not shocked by any bad treatment politicians are giving scientists. At least, well, I say we, I should say I, but this seems like it should be we expect it to be par for the course. And Oppenheimer is so taken aback and wounded by it, I guess personally, that I kind of need a little more establishing where he got these expectations from. I don't know.
That's true. I mean, yeah, he did in the film's language, create the chain reaction that will destroy the world. So, yes. Yeah, I mean, he can get a little Dr. Fauci across.
Of course, the stuff he's being interrogated about has nothing to do with the science.
Right. Well, it never does.
It's all about whether he has communist sympathies and whether he's trying to undermine, being all peaceful and stuff.
Yeah, and that, that too should become preloaded as dramatic. That if there's, because I don't feel like when you're watching a movie like, I don't know, Trumbo or Good Night or Good Luck, like the McCarthy hearings are terrifying. And knowing, like, I guess for screenwriters that are probably not as independently wealthy, like there's a lot at stake for them just being blacklisted. But I think you could have raised the specter, juice this up, Hollywood up a little bit, raise the specter. Like, just losing security clearance doesn't carry a lot of weight with me, but the idea that he would lose like some protections and that McCarthy might be coming for him next or whatever, that specter could have been raised more effectively, I think.
And he is essentially something. I mean, he's pretty.
Something that the movie also soft pedals is how many of the Manhattan Project scientists were Jewish, and how really kind of difficult it was for the power structure to admit that they were needed until such time as they weren't.
Yeah, that's in there, but it could have. Yeah. It's in there in the beginning. It feels
that's the crazy thing about this movie is that the crazy thing about this movie is that everything is in there. You can't say Richard Feynman isn't in there because he is. There's one shot of him playing the bongos, I think. You can't say that they didn't touch on every subject because it is touched on, but it's the weight granted to those elements that I have issues with.
It is overstuffed in many ways. It feels like, this is like we're getting every bit of docudrama in here, all these things and ideas and stuff that will add context. It's got to be represented because we're doing docudrama, just this character. We don't have anything to do with him. There's not time for him to have a real role in the proceedings, but he was there. So he will be represented on screen. A lot of that. And I like that generally. There's a verite to it, not that this film is particularly interested in, in strict realism, not with its structure and its bomb gimmicks and such. But I like that it's attention to historical detail and accuracy.
Right. It's not beholden to realism, but it is, it feels beholden to historical fidelity or not.
Yeah. Which is a good place to be, I think. I like that. Yeah.
I don't know. I got.
I'm surprised we didn't spend more time on the Chicago pile because that's the most Nolan-esque looking thing I've ever seen. That pile of graphite blocks.
Yeah, it looks like it's straight out of Tenet.
It's one shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, maybe another scene or two there would have helped, because especially if Rami Malek's going to come off the top rope at the end, like we said. But what you guys are talking about, maybe it's a good way to segue into talking about sex in Christopher Nolan movies.
Yes. Exciting.
You can certainly, he's right. A lot of my criticisms are like things that I had a little trouble understanding or whatever, or following in the moment. I just, again, like I felt like I was putting together the puzzle pieces of the timeline as I went too much, like more than I should have been. There are movies where puzzling out the timeline is the point, and I'm not sure that needed to be the point of this one. But in terms of one thing, like that I would definitely point to as an example of this, it's all in there. We see Oppenheimer have affairs with women, and yet when Damon is sort of giving what he's heard summary about Oppenheimer, and he says, "You're a dilettante, you're a cad, that." You're like the sexually voracious guy. I'm like, I'm not sure I've gotten that from his characterization, that I buy that of this character, even though I definitely know there's objectively that material exists in the movie. And yet I guess because it's a Nolan movie and it feels so fundamentally sexless, I never buy sex as a big driver of Oppenheimer's character.
I think it is understood intellectually that sex is a big driver of Oppenheimer's character because it was historically the case. And I mean, if you see footage of, actual Oppenheimer, he doesn't really ooze sensuality, I would have to say, but we understand that he did sleep with a ton of his coworkers' wives. That's just part of who he was. So it doesn't have to be.
And apparently he was just tremendously charismatic. I mean, his students started dressing like him. That's not in the film. It would be fun to have seen.
I mean, it would be interesting to see the version of this story that is sort of the Manhattan Project as a sex cult.
I mean, it's
a
sort
cult of personality.
A Don Draper kind of vibe to him. I mean, I could get that. It wouldn't be the Nolan version of it. I mean, like a lot of the pre-release hype on this, if you recall, was like, yeah, there's some full frontal nudity in this one. He's really going for it. You make fun of Nolan sex, and not after this one. Full frontal, everyone. It's going to be nuts. And then, you see the movie and it's just like the most Nolan sex scenes imaginable, which is that
everybody's got their legs crossed.
Are naked, sitting in chairs, staring at each other, not moving, sort of artfully. Kind of,
well, I just thought, the most Nolan. You ask an AI prompt to come up with a sex scene in the style of Christopher Nolan, and it's like, okay. White guy in his 30s, slick back hair, lies perfectly still on a bed. Beautiful young woman who is dead in the main timeline of the story.
Yes.
Sits atop him, places his phallus inside of her while forcing him to read to her in Sanskrit. Like,
yeah,
that feels like
pretty much nails it.
It feels like self-parody.
It is funny that he ended up finding a way to do Dead Wife when Oppenheimer's wife famously was alive. He's like, well, what if the actual emotional relationship was with a different woman who does die? Then we can kind of still do it.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah. amazing that he's still fit. I mean, I guess it's part of the real historical record. So even if he's trying to steer away from the things he's known for, it's.
Oh, he's not though. That's not what he's doing here. He's like, no, we're going to have some chapter titles. We're going to have alternate timelines going on concurrently. We're going to, and Dead Wife. Don't worry, I'll find a way. It's Nolan. He's got to do those things. I did think the Emily Blunt character and performance were all sorts of weird and crazy. That character didn't make sense to me at all. Like,
this is where I think, and this is where I think you pay some of the cost of the weird structural stuff. That I think she
never gets a scene. She never gets to play a scene.
She gets
like the fragments.
Exactly. Fragments is what I was about to get at there. I mean, the part after he finds out she committed suicide is I found it affecting for very personal reasons. I don't want to.
No, it's a good scene. It's a good scene for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I that is a thing that I haven't experienced it exactly, but I have had an ex of mine that died under bad circumstances, and I found out about it way after the fact, and at a time when we were in lockdown or whatever, and the only person it kind of floored me, and the only person I had around to even speak to about it was my wife, who I'm like feel very uncomfortable unloading this on because has to do with stuff before she was around or whatever, but like that whole scene, I'm like, this is weird, intense dramatic material that deserves more than a scene fragment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that is a relationship built out of fragments, and I don't think it totally works, but each individual fragment is an opportunity
to define that relationship in that moment. I feel like,
yeah, that's true. But it feels
Blunt.
It feels like Blunt is kind of
Blunt's but
she's doing a different character in most scenes. It feels like there's a new way to play this character every new scene. I mean, the only thing that is kind of consistent is that she's like, "Why won't you stand up to him? Aren't you a man?" There's a little of that. That's my Emily Blunt voice, I guess. But like that's the only thing that is really consistent is that she kind of complains about him not being manly enough repeatedly. Otherwise, she'll just kind of change as to the needs of the scene. Like there's that very effective scene when they are interrogating Oppenheimer about his affairs, and she is sitting in the corner of the room and imagining him having sex with Florence Pugh. I guess that's more of a sex scene than the actual sex scene is.
It's probably Blunt's biggest moment.
Yes, that's very well done.
Yeah.
I do
when
like
she's under interrogation is maybe her biggest moment.
Then she's just like a different person altogether. All of a sudden,
exactly. I'm like, who is this? That's why I was like, who is this person?
She's just sassy and able to just like throw it right back in Jason Clarke's face in a clever way, and in a bunch of Sorkin-esque kind of like reversal dialogue. The character makes no sense to me. That would be the maybe my biggest issue with the film. Actually, is the Emily Blunt performance / character just doesn't hold together for me. But I mean, the individual scenes are good. They're
she's great. Obviously, she's always
she's
good.
not like bad. Yeah, she's
with what she's given.
Blunt. Yeah,
but I do think that's where it's a 3-hour movie, but we have that first half hour, which is this sort of picture of a particle physicist as a young man traveling around Europe, just meeting every oh, hey, here's another 45-year-old famous white guy who's playing a famous physicist whose name like you might vaguely recognize for one scene.
Niels Bohr. Hey, there he is. Yeah.
And here's Heisenberg. We all know him from Breaking Bad, right? And anyway.
He finds stuff to make that fun, though, like the cyanide in the apple, stuff like that. You're just like, whoa, how about that? That's unexpected. That's kind of a fun movie thing to put into your movie, and establishes him as kind of nuts. It turns out Oppenheimer might be a little bit of a crazy person. That's cool. It's good stuff.
Yeah, but it's like
they leave out the bit where his rich parents kept him from being expelled.
Well, no one found out. It's a wormhole.
Well, somebody found out because it made it into the books, that Nolan's working off of, obviously. Yeah. But
that's real? I thought that was a complete flight of fancy. That's a real thing that got reported.
Yeah, that's something you do not leave out. And I think that's the only reason it's in.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought there was a flight of fancy in a Christopher Nolan historical biopic.
Well, if it was like, well, what if we made Oppenheimer almost a murderer here? Isn't that kind of interesting? I could see Nolan doing that, just throwing that in.
I presumed it was real just because there was no follow-up on it. Like if it was a screenplay invention,
right? Would a lesser or greater filmmaker? Would a lesser or greater filmmaker have brought it around and had an apple at the end of the movie somehow?
Yes. Well, I mean, I certainly that's the one. Look, I don't want to give him credit for like not going that cliche route, because one of the Nolanisms that I roll my eyes the hardest about, like, and this isn't even fair. Like, it's not a bad technique to use, but I just, in a Nolan movie, I clock it so quickly now. We see the shot of Strauss watching Einstein and Oppenheimer talking in black and white, and how he's taking it over. I'm like, okay, I recognize just the structure of this shot. It's sort of a silent tableau that is in slight slow motion, perhaps. And we're going to revisit this shot 3 or 4 times throughout the movie. And it's going to be, we're going to close the movie on this thing. We're going to reveal something different about it than what we're seeing this time. And that's the thing we had to keep my eye on. Like that's going back to the Prestige. He laid out exactly how this works. You get it in Dark Knight Rises, you get it.
No, that's great though. That's
you get the kids in Inception. It's like, but yeah, but I'm like rolling my eyes about like, okay, so here's our closing shot. We're 30 minutes into the movie. And you're right. That's not a fair criticism, but I'm just saying how the Nolan-oscopy has ruined me with some of these Nolanisms.
Mm-hmm. I suppose so. I was excited to see how they'd land that scene though. Like it was a dangling thread through the whole movie. You're just like, well, what's the payoff going to be for the Einstein scene? It's going to be good, I know, and it was. It totally is good. So they land it, and that's all that really matters. He usually lands those moments, Like,
well, there's 2 things about it. I think the ultimate thematic landing there of Oppenheimer saying that we didn't light the atmosphere on fire, but I think the chain reaction that destroyed the world is in place. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. The part about young Han Solo telling Iron Man, like, did you ever even think that maybe they weren't even talking about you? Well, yeah. I mean, that was the first thing I thought of. This guy, Downey, doesn't seem to be a complete idiot. You think he would have at some point considered that. Again, like I can see on paper, it's about his ego, but
that would have been a great scene, though. Oppenheimer and Einstein standing by the lake saying, that's Strauss. Maybe he's kind of pushy.
That would have been the reveal.
I mean,
that they're just gossiping.
I think he's kind of a dick, actually. Let's be mean to him.
Laugh at something I just said.
And then they see him walking over, and Oppenheimer's like whispering, "Oh, here he comes! Here he comes!" When you walk by him, call him Tom.
Approach to science.
And he's like, "No, I'm not even going to acknowledge him." I don't know. Did I just do Schwarzenegger as Einstein?
That would have been a fun cameo.
Austrian Viennese.
I thought it was Stephen Fry in the trailer that was Einstein. It wasn't, as it turned out.
No.
I was surprised it wasn't a known person showing up for that. Maybe he's... Well, no, I mean, he's putting known
Tom
people
Conti.
everywhere. No, Tom Conti, yeah, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize him.
I didn't. I've heard the name. I don't know who he is.
That's good. I mean, Einstein, you run such a risk of parody with that, that I think they actually pulled that off pretty well.
Yeah.
I can't speak to how well Brana captured Niels Bohr, but
no one can. He's
no frame of reference there.
No, I can tell you
Brana,
this.
He's got to be in these. Yeah, he's a good luck charm now for no.
And I don't know how well that Josh Hartnett captured the real life Professor Lawrence, but man, Josh Hartnett off the bench.
Josh Hartnett,
saw this?
Who knew?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's pretty
so
cool.
good in this movie.
Yeah, everyone's really good in this. Like for this name, this just fuselage of that's not the right word. This barrage of huge names.
Fusillade? How do you lod or laid?
Fuselage would be like the cabin of an airplane.
The body of a plane.
That's very much the wrong word. I was going for barrage.
So a plane load of star casting. A plane load
of stars. Yeah, there are no stars left in the sky. They're all on the plane.
They're all in the fuselage.
They're all good.
The fuselage is a barrage, right? That's where we're going.
A fusillade.
Fuselade.
Is there something like, I don't know?
Yeah.
Is there an atomic word that works in that? God damn it! I'm ruining this. Okay. My point is, they're all really good. They're all really funny, and I enjoy all the guest appearances. Even Rami Malek. I'm just like, look at that! Look at him. There he is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not Rami Malek, but he doesn't do much. Anyone who is called on to do anything in this makes the most out of their scene. You know. Jason Clarke and Tony Goldwyn in the back. I'm noting all these. Matthew Modine. Who's the guy? James Remar. Great scene. Great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So here's let's do a quick poll or contest here.
Mm.
Who in Moneyball terms is providing the best like bang for their buck off the bench here, or in the supporting cast? You got Remar. I mean, he's only in one scene that barely counts, but I think the contenders.
He's got the one line about his honeymoon in Kyoto,
so
which apparently he improvised.
So good. He's a real contender. Yeah. I don't know. Should we rule out Murphy and Downey and probably
yeah. I'm talking supporting performances. So I think the biggest you can nominate is Damon.
Oh well, Damon then.
And I think it's Damon and Hartnett and Casey Affleck.
Affleck's really
Betty Safdie.
Betty Safdie's pretty good too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're all great. I don't know. I mean, Remar's actually in contention for that scene, but no, I think I got to go Damon. I think it's been great to see Damon kind of morph into utility player. You know, as good of a leading man as he is, I always like it when he's like third lead, fourth lead, something like that. Comes in, bats clean up.
Well, he's a master of. He's a master of exposition. There are very few actors out there who can rattle off those technical monologues and make it sound like they know what they're talking about, and there's an emotional component to it.
Yeah.
I can really only think of Damon and maybe Dan Aykroyd. Just on the level of just on the level of people who sound like they know exactly what they're talking about, even if you don't understand what they're talking about.
That's a comparison that often gets drawn. You know?
But that's right. Master
David often called. Yeah, David often called the Aykroyd of our era. And Affleck always called the Ramis of our era.
He's really good in this. It's a performance I'm not hearing many people talk about in the context of this film. I think, Murphy and Downey are kind of sucking all the air up. But I really love Damon.
Downey's pretty incredible to be fair.
Oh, sure. Yeah, he is.
But again, that's weird. And it's a role that, he's playing a villain that I'm not convinced entirely the movie needs. And Damon, on the other hand, I think is playing a character that the movie desperately needs. That he brings some humanity to this, and actual likable humanity. Yeah. There's some, venal humanity on display with James Remar or whatever. But this, or arguably Emily Blunt. But seeing Damon in like supporting mode and in old man mode playing, he's embraced sort of that. Oh, he's playing a middle-aged guy now. Yeah, this is not because up through his 40s, he was still playing, The Martian or whoever, Jason Bourne, like characters that could be in their 30s, and he could just pass. But
Damon's got to be.
This is an old man,
right? Yeah, he's.
Well, it's not an old man role, but it's a middle-aged
general. He's a military
but
general.
It's air. He's not hitting the gym. Yeah.
This character also can support that too. This is the protagonist of a different Manhattan Project movie played by Paul Newman, right? A Fat Man and Little Boy.
Man and Little Boy.
So that character obviously has juice to him, and he's
and Brian Dennehy played him in a TV movie, Day One, with David Strathairn as Oppenheimer.
Wow,
that might be the best cast.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for another Oppenheimer movie, but that casting sounds fantastic.
That's really good. Yeah.
Wow.
Huh. Interesting. This has been dramatized a number of times. Actually, this is the first one I've seen, but it's out there.
Well, it makes sense. It's the most important fucking thing that's ever happened.
Great Damon line, great Damon delivery. I really like that's him kind of getting a little bit like the old Damon magic out.
Yeah, you like them apples.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, okay, but I guess this is bringing it back to my gripes. I kind of want this movie to just be about the Manhattan Project, maybe. That is by far and away the most interesting material to me. And I think there's a lot to mine there about the relationship between Oppenheimer and Damon's character. And we could get Oppenheimer's relationship to Emily Blunt actually ironed out, making some sense if we're not jumping around quite so much, I feel.
It's what I assumed the movie would be, actually. I thought it would be isolated to Manhattan Project.
They had a kid. They had a kid at Los Alamos during the project, and I mean that's in the movie. Hollywood thematic thing to have.
That is, it's 2 hours and a half hours into the movie.
There
for one scene fragment.
Yeah, it's there. It's just not dwelt on. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
precisely. Yeah.
Like I said, they haven't left anything out.
I mean,
it's just where
but they haven't done justice to it all. Is what I would argue.
Right.
I would watch a 3-hour version that is just the middle hour of this movie expanded. I do think that what they do is pretty strong within the context of the totality of their story, which is the thing about like we are not able to control this power as a species, I think is the ultimate thesis of the film. And I think that is established pretty well by the way they're telling the story. And that is what I think the last hour is about, really. It is it's Strauss as sort of a representative of the pettiness and the shittiness of humanity that will ultimately doom us. Not specifically in this case, but just sort of as like, well, we're full of people like Strauss. We're full of assholes that make it about them that don't really respect the power of this thing. And because of that, because there will always be plenty of guys like that, we are fundamentally doomed. We now have the power to destroy ourselves. I think that is the end of the film. And that is basically what the last hour gets us to.
Yeah. I guess
all the WWE stuff is basically in service of that idea. That works very well for me. And we're getting there by the end of the Manhattan Project stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. The conclusion of the Manhattan Project stuff is the most effective version of that, where they just pack up the bomb and drive it away from him without, even leaving him money on the nightstand is like, rough stuff, and that gets that across so well. But then there's I don't mind Sorkening up the courtroom stuff, I guess, making it fanciful in terms of like procedure or whatever. But like thematically, what it throws me there is that the revelation that we're always going to have politicians that are going to be venal, and that's the doom of society, and there's egos, like that is played as such a revelation to the Oppenheimer character. I'm like, you're a grown man, you've and a somewhat practicing communist. Like you've read, Marx in the original German. Like these concepts of politicians and bourgeois people that fucking up like the work of the workers should not be revelations to you when you're 50.
Yes, but he is the audience surrogate. And yes, we can say, well, I obviously know we're all going to die because of government ineptitude, obviously. But I think that you can underline that a little. And look, this is a little bit more literal in its theming than Nolan usually gets. A little bit more cheap seats. That Alden Ehrenreich speech, for example, really putting a bow on the idea.
He's the one composite character in the entire cast.
Yeah, he feels like it. But I do think that it does, at least on paper, mirror the actual arc of Oppenheimer, which is that, yes, he built the bomb and then had regrets about building the bomb. Like he came to realize like, maybe that was a mistake and I am haunted forever by it. I mean, that is just the nature of who he is. If you're telling this story, that's the story you signed up to tell, essentially. And so finding a way to place that makes sense to me. Could it be a little bit more complex than that? Maybe, but in the context of a film that's going to make $300 million domestically and function as a summer tentpole blockbuster, I don't think so. I think this probably helps it in that regard and helps it probably get nominated for Best Picture and be, a film that resonates with an enormous amount of people, which, I think maybe we underrate how good Nolan is at that.
For the chain reaction theme, you could have started the movie with Trinity and then told the story about how the guys who worked on the bomb had different ambivalent reactions, but most of them went ahead to keep working on the H bomb. Partly just to keep their hand in and see where it was going, and if they couldn't maybe control it and maybe even prove it couldn't be done. But that's the thing, is after the A bomb, a lot of these guys went on to make the next worst thing.
Well,
and that's your chain reaction right there.
Well, you have employment, you need to.
Yeah,
things you got to worry about.
Publish or perish.
Yeah. You don't want to have
the
to
argument,
change
that we see it now with AI research a lot too. That but it gets brought up a lot in this movie, is that we have to do this because if we don't do this, somebody else will. And that doesn't get less true over time.
Yeah.
That never stops applying.
Right.
So yeah, of course they're going to mostly keep working on the H-bomb.
And it also, I mean, if you read all sort of speculative fiction and theories about what could have happened if we didn't have if the Hiroshima bomb did not go off, if that didn't happen, there's a school of thought that basically we had a decades long war with Russia in the immediate aftermath of World War II. There's no way of knowing what the world looks like if that doesn't occur, and that it will forever haunt you, kind of thing. And it should, perhaps, like especially if you made an atomic bomb, but it's kind of the unknowable nature of history.
Yeah, and that's sort of, that is sort of what is haunting Oppenheimer and Einstein at the end. Is I did this thing, and maybe I have regrets about it now, but does that even mean I could have stopped it if and does that matter? Like, is it ultimately important that I didn't need to be the one to do it? You can make all kinds of Nuremberg-esque arguments about that too, that apply to on a smaller scale of, well, if I hadn't shot this prisoner, some other guard would have. So why would I put myself in jail? And we don't apply that all the way down the line. But when it comes to the march of technology, I guess I put a little more stock into it. That I don't know if I ever buy just don't do the research or just don't do the thing as a really viable solution for anything, any technological problem, threat.
Well, it's spelled out pretty clearly in this film when somebody splits the atom, and they hits it, hits the world. All of a sudden, the smartest people in the world are like, oh, well, now it's a race to a bomb. And everyone kind of realizes that implicitly. That's from that point on. I don't know. Would you say this film is pro or anti-bomb? I think ultimately it has to be anti, but not anti-Oppenheimer for making it, which is an interesting distinction to make.
I don't know. I get, and maybe I'm just projecting my own stuff onto it. Is I feel like it almost it's a moot point whether you're pro or anti-bomb. At this juncture, it is, because we're so long past there. But kind of like I was saying there, that for a long time I felt this way. I've come around to be a lot more negative on social media, but for a long time I kind of thought people would gripe about it, and I'd be like, well, yeah, so what? It could be good for us. It could be horrible for us, but it's genie's not going back in the bottle. So you can shake your fist at it, or you can try and adapt to it. Like,
that is probably the most relevant modern metaphor for the atomic bomb is social media. Like, it's the thing that changed the world, probably for the worst, but there's really nothing that would have stopped it. There was no way for that not to come out. And why this film resembles social networks so much.
Yeah, maybe.
In a lot of ways,
that's that if somebody, we could have not had Twitter, but we would have had something as toxic as Twitter, most likely. And now it's all about AI research, which is a whole other can of fish that we don't need to get into. I think if you're looking at it metaphorically in like modern terms, the most interesting way of looking at this from Nolan-oscopy perspective is that this is a movie about Nolan's regret at unleashing superhero movies onto the box office and destroying the theatrical experience. Yeah,
I love this take. This is great.
Okay, somebody's got to do it. Can't stop it once it's going.
Someone's going to make a Batman film. If it's not us, it's going to be the Nazis.
Yeah, but he made a good one, and that was what doomed us all.
I think Nolan's primary identification with Oppenheimer is that they both get massive resources, finances, and personnel to realize their vision, and that's got to be an aphrodisiac.
Yeah. Well, I'm being sort of facetious about that take, but I do think there is something there that he does feel like he's had a hand in, contributed to destroying the. Yeah. I think it's a little grandiose to say the art form has been destroyed by superhero movies, but certainly the economy supporting that art form in the distribution model that he prefers, and I guess my language there, you can tell I don't take that quite as seriously as he does. But it is real that the theatrical experience is diminishing and been degraded. I mean, again, I think it's sort of moot to argue like against technology, but
well, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Well, it's been diffused. I mean, if you want my cynical take on movie going and audiences, it's that for 100 years there was no alternative, and if you go back 4,000 years, there was no alternative. If you wanted to see a famous artist perform, you had to go where all the other people were and sit in a giant crowd of strangers because that's where it was happening and that's when it was happening. And now you can watch a movie whenever you want. You don't. Yeah, it's not like there's nothing going on at midnight, so you go out and see the midnight movie, and it's whatever they put on, and that's how you discover the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T or something.
Yeah,
there's so it's my cynical view that maybe human beings aren't wired for a communal experience; they just had no choice. And I mean, they need the communal experience; it's absolutely valuable. But give people a choice.
Yeah, but they still
living room
crave enough of the communal experience to do a second screen experience and to live tweet their experience of the movie. They still kind of want that, but the convenience factor.
Oh God,
they want it.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, for me, it's also price. It's
I mean, I guess you can kind of simulate the communal experience with that, though.
Oh yeah, it's a copy. It's a poor facsimile, but it's people still kind of reaching for it.
Yeah,
and I mean, it's a lot of things. It's got
yeah.
It's gotten so expensive to go to the movies that's a factor for me. It's the time investment that I don't have anymore now that I have small children in the house.
Oh yeah,
and you know how long? Like it took me a couple of tries to get to Oppenheimer because it's like, okay, I'm going to take some time off during a day to go see a movie. Now, in the traditional old man sense, movie's a 2-hour experience, right? Oppenheimer's 3. Plus, I gotta get to the theater and back. Yeah, plus half-hour trailers, plus getting to the theater and back. And now it's like, okay, if I leave at lunch, I can just barely make it back by 5 to like when the nanny is leaving to take over my duties there. And like, it was I had to take a whole day off basically to see Oppenheimer.
This is why I did not see it in IMAX. This is exactly why.
Yeah, no, I had one free day and I did the thing. I did Barbie and Oppenheimer in the same afternoon because that was the time I had to do it.
Did that work for you? I mean, they seem not particularly complimentary as experiences.
I think I would rather have started with Oppenheimer and finished with Barbie.
I could see how Oppenheimer would kind of eradicate a lot of what, because Barbie is sort of a souffle, it's light and effervescent. And, after 3 hours of, the world will end in nuclear fire, I'd be like, wait, what the fuck happened in Barbie again?
It's more like a cheesecake quiche. It's actually surprisingly dense.
Okay. I was saying Barbie's charms are, are that it's fun and cute and moves fast. It does have some thought to it, but have you seen Barbie yet, Al?
I'm a little resentful of Barbie at this point, like because I would have gone into it for years. I've been of the position that like no source material is so like terrible that you can't build something interesting out of it cinematically. And I think there's plenty of proof points between, Clue and the Lego movie and Pirates of the Caribbean, at least that first one I think is a great movie and it's based on a theme park ride. Like you can do kind of anything with nothing. So I would have been coming out of the gate defending Barbie's right to exist as a movie. And now it's sort of progressed to the part where like, now that it feels like, oh, it's an obligation that I need to go see that movie based on a toy line because it's like such an important cultural artifact and I have to do that. I kind of like want to be like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little. Like it's still like G.I. Joe, the movie, right? Like it's, based on a toy.
No, it's a good one. It is a good one.
It's not that I don't think it's good.
Yeah, you could.
that is now culturally important is what I resist.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever tried to say Pirates of the Caribbean was culturally important.
God, I wish. Yeah.
I'm not even denying that Barbie is more than a commercial for the toy. I'm just resentful of it in a weird way that I I have a hard time explaining. Also, like, it's not speaking out against Barbie at this point
Reasonable.
puts me in league with a bunch of people that I don't want to be. I don't want to be on that side of anything.
Yeah, you can catch it at home in a month or whatever. It's fine, because that's the other part of this is the theatrical window is shrinking. I don't know. I mean, is it possible our podcast, started during the pandemic, is just going to be a cataloging of the collapse of theatrical distribution and studio system altogether? I mean,
well, half our episodes are about Disney Plus shows, so yes, it is that.
Ew, God, ew. Yeah. Oh, did anyone go for Secret Invasion? I haven't had nearly the time to allow for that sort of stuff.
I did 2 episodes. I haven't been motivated to go back. I'll probably do the rest. I mean, you've got Olivia Colman, and she's always awesome. She has like one scene.
She's so good.
Wild she's in that.
But it's so grim.
Wild she's in that.
And it's making me develop this thesis about these Disney Marvel shows, where so many of them, like the Star Wars shows and the superhero shows, they all seem to hinge on a grassroots rebellion of a rebel cell of some sort, fighting back against the monolithic government. And I'm like, what is the largest entertainment company in the world? What's the largest corporation in the world trying to tell us? Are they really just conditioning us to distrust government and maybe just put them in charge?
Oh, I was thinking more in terms of Disney is already the monolithic world power,
right?
And they're just trying to villainize anybody who's trying to do a scrappy indie movie.
Any of the other monoliths, right? But the rebels are the heroes. The rebels are always the heroes. Yeah.
Are they though? I mean, the heroes are not.
I guess they're not heroes.
Not in Captain America and Winter Soldier.
That's true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, interesting.
You mean, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's one of my biggest beefs with Secret Invasion, which is bad. Olivia Colman's fantastic in it. Ben Mendelsohn's quite good. And the guy who plays the villain gives a good performance, but it's a bad character. But the big gripe is it's the Skrulls. There's apparently 1 million of them. They're doing they're shape-shifting and have infiltrated the highest levels of all world government and militaries and media even. Christopher McDonald plays like a Tucker Carlson type that's a Skrull. And they don't do shit with that.
That sounds fun.
No, but they don't do shit with it. It's in 2 scenes. But it sucks.
Should I watch this before we talk about They Live?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, maybe. Well, no, so they do nothing with this because they have the setup to do all that stuff, and then their operation is completely indistinguishable from what the Flag Smashers are doing in Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's a bunch of people in an abandoned warehouse doing backpack bombs.
Right.
And like,
right.
Shit. Okay. I haven't heard anything good about it, so it's not really something I'm rushing towards, but I don't know. This has nothing to do with Oppenheimer, except maybe it does. Maybe this is all part of the the heat death of cinemas.
No,
is going on that Oppenheimer is sort of accidentally a metaphor for.
Yeah, maybe that's a good reach. I think it also has something to do with you and I haven't talked in a month, and so we're catching up on things. But it does loosely fit that metaphor. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do like that actually. That's really cool. I mean, his movies are all kind of about making movies too, so it's not out of bounds. I think that could very well have been something in the hopper, even subconsciously. It could be coming out in Oppenheimer.
I mean, I think it's even a little conscious. Like he has to be aware of the Manhattan Project as a metaphor for the type of giant project. I guess not government sponsored, but
the most
Oppenheimer's
important thing
relationship
anyone's ever done. Yes.
Right. Yeah. But Oppenheimer's relationship to Damon and the government is clearly, he sees some parallels in his relationship to studios and how they are a necessary evil to get his, stunning vision realized in the world. Then, I guess it's nice that he doesn't villainize Damon too much in that regard, because I think that would come off as
not at all.
Unlikable in the way that I think a lot of art about art becomes for me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got his villain to represent all the ills of the world, of the government, of the studios in Downey.
Right.
So,
well, can we talk about the secondary villain then? We blew past it earlier, but Casey Affleck's one sequence in this movie.
Really
that's good. Mm-hmm.
That's part of it.
I love that.
Can we do the whole movie about this without
just the way that scene is presented is so cool with it's Damon telling him like, no, you can't talk to that guy. He's like, I kind of already did talk to that guy. That's
and we're cutting back, and he's more and more flustered.
Yeah, just saying the dumbest aloof shit to this guy who's like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me about her. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's a terrific scene.
And then is it in the scene where Jean kills herself? There's one shot, there's one cut where it sure looks like there's a gloved hand pushing down on her head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know what that's supposed to, are we supposed to think that Casey Affleck offed her in one possible timeline? Or
I think it's a thought that goes through Oppenheimer's head. Not that he knows who Casey Affleck is at that point, but yes, that's Casey Affleck's hand. But it's subjective to Oppenheimer's experience. He's not sure if he believes it because they don't make much of it, but it's definitely there. And I think that's cool. That's the kind of subjectivity I like.
It's apparently a real conspiracy theory that she was murdered for being a communist sympathizer with connections to the Manhattan Project. Or not a sympathizer, just a straight up communist. It is a conspiracy theory that they killed her. And I think that is Nolan's way of representing that, or at least Oppenheimer's kind of unsurety over what really happened there. There's no real reason for him to think it's not a suicide, but it's in his head somehow. I really like that. It's kind of JFK-ish, kind of like crazy Oliver Stone shit. I like that very much.
Has Nolan made a conspiracy thriller? Would any of us qualify as that? First,
not really. He has. I mean,
it depends on what you think is going on in Tenet.
Yeah,
I guess. Well, it seems like he kind of takes the perspective of the conspirators, right? That like the Prestige is kind of about conspiracies.
Dark Knight is a conspiracy, way of putting it. Actually.
Yeah.
And
Rises.
It's a good guy conspiracy. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Rises has him on both sides.
He's never done a full-on conspiracy thriller, though.
Parallax View.
Something like that. And he probably would do a great job at that. But it also would almost feel redundant, I think. If he wanted to do it, that'd be great. Sure. But
it's a little like the thing of him doing a Bond movie at this point. Like he's between Inception and Tenet, and I guess to some degree Batman. Like he's kind of done his Bond movie. I think I would a full blown conspiracy thriller. I still would accept from him happily.
Oh sure, I mean that's right down his lane. Yeah.
I kind of wish this movie had either. I don't know. Like I said, it was weird for me to have the thought that maybe I wanted this to be a more straightforward biopic because that's a genre that I don't like generally. But I did feel like the actual story, when you get to the meat of it, is so interesting that you could have done a more straightforward sort of rise and fall thing. But also, you could, you could do a version of the Manhattan Project movie there's heavier overtones of paranoia about it. Like that's it's in this movie. Everything's in this movie. But because everything's in here, none of it really takes over the movie and defines it.
Well, I think the philosophical kind of like, could we have stopped this? Is there a way to have stopped, is there a way to have saved the world? And then we fucked it up, or was it inevitable? Is a pretty good hook for an Oppenheimer film, and and it lands pretty good in the end, I think. I know, in my opinion, and I just do find this film to be just largely really entertaining, like entertaining in the way that I think it's more fun to watch this film than the majority of his stuff. Really, this is just straight up kind of a thriller in a lot of ways that I didn't expect from it. And I was really pleased with that. And I do have a soft spot for docudramas of this type, stuff that is taking historical events. I like that much more than a standard biopic, Spielberg's Lincoln, could have been like really frustrating, but I think it's great because it's almost kind of just like a heist film in structure, about a very specific event, or something like 13 Days, when we're doing a story about a historical moment, there's a nice way to approach it. And I think this film largely takes that with a lot of fun Nolan touches and cool sound design choices. And, I did not mind the strange structure and nonlinear storytelling. I thought that kind of added to it in a way I can't quite define.
Well, it certainly stamps it as Nolan's.
It does. And it also allows him to do scenes like when he's speaking to the church on the eve of the bombs going off in Japan. And you can kind of just, without actually showing the actual bomb going off, kind of have that effect. All through sound design and light design, and just have him kind of experience it while he's delivering some sort of bullshit speech that he's not happy with. That's great for me. That's great sequence. Storytelling. That's the kind of thing that I want Nolan to do here. I certainly don't. I mean, I've heard people saying like they left the money shot off, the thing that would have really made their point, showing flesh melting off of people's bones in Nagasaki. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know if that's necessary for this. I think that would have been maybe ghoulish, instead of helpful for the film.
Yeah, I did miss not having a mushroom cloud at Trinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a pretty good size bomb explosion there.
Filling the frame. Well, filling the frame with flame was the note there. And that's pretty great on giant screen.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'll throw a lot of gripes at this movie. I'm not going to say any bad words about the whole Trinity sequence, though. That's the highlight of the movie.
It's so fun, yeah. Really cool, really good stuff.
Yeah. But I guess that's what I do want that to be the whole centerpice of the movie. I want that to. Yeah, I guess my sort of ideal version of this.
It's the big action scene.
Yeah, such as it is. I mean, but I think I could do without some of the early life biopic stuff. Just make it about the Manhattan Project, and then I don't know if you need the dueling legal structure. Well, I think you want to end in the same spot, right? With that the thematic stuff with Einstein, and did we destroy the world? And I'm just not sure that you need the Downey Jr. hearing in its entirety, or to get that like comeuppance there. That feels like a sop to Hollywood convention, even though it was part of the real historical record. But I think you can hit it harder about, if you want this to be an anti-bomb movie or about how Oppenheimer is really truly haunted by this. If you don't provide the audience that sort of, seeing the wrestling heel get pinned there, and just play out the Manhattan Project, and then show sort of the hearing, and him being destroyed in the public eye, and then on him kind of taking the loss, and you can just do the thing about Strauss getting his comeuppance at that hearing 10 years later in a text, chyron at the end.
Right. The Miramax and then. Yeah.
Like, theoretically, you could cut all of that and just do the Truman scene. You could really just, throw the Gary Oldman Truman scene in there, and that would basically do the whole thing for you if you really wanted.
Yeah, like all the aftermath stuff that's really effective, none of it's really tied to the hearings, in my opinion. It's just seeing the bomb drive off, the Truman scene, the talk with Einstein. That's the stuff that I don't know that you need all the legal mishigots to get there.
I guess, I think you're right in that you don't need it. I find all that pretty entertaining, so I don't necessarily want it cut, but I do think you could land in the same place as strongly without it. Probably, you're right, and I enjoy seeing this Robert Downey Jr. performance, though. I enjoy
he's really good.
Bullshit. It's fun.
If we have an Oscars this year, he's absolutely in line.
All right.
Well, you know what? It may be that the version I laid out wins just as many Oscars. Well, maybe one less for Downey, but gets the same amount of critical acclaim. But you might be right in that the difference between having that villain and who gets his comeuppance and what I was talking about is the difference between a $200 million movie and a $400 million movie, or
yeah,
that's what allows this to straddle that line into the Hollywood blockbuster.
I do think he's playing for an audience, which is a surprise with this film. I kind of figured this would be his, sort of an unpopular kind of personal film. Honestly, I was surprised at the July release date. I was like, this doesn't feel like a blockbuster at all. And yeah, it proved me wrong. Not just with the actual numbers, but with the film itself. I think this plays an audience incredibly well. And he is in the enviable position of being able to make a film like this that people will show up for and have that experience with. If you just say Ridley Scott makes this film, It comes out in like September, and it makes $60 million, and gets nominated for no Oscars. Obviously Ridley Scott would not make this film, but like, if he made a Ridley Scott version of the Oppenheimer story, and it would probably be good, but it would not have the cultural attention.
It would probably show the bomb at Hiroshima.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
And full frontal nudity.
Yeah. It would probably have better sex scenes. That's true.
Yeah, that's what I said. That Ridley, he gets me hard.
All right. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think this has been a weak year at the movies so far, to be honest. This might be my favorite film released in 2023 so far, though. I don't think I've seen something that I responded to more favorably in this calendar year. So I am rooting for it to go all the way with those Oscars or whatever and keep making money. And yeah, I think it's high up on my Nolan rankings. I'm quite taken by it. I hope I'm pleased he's still able to do stuff like this. I want more of this kind of thing from him. Or of course the thing I really want him to do is a horror film. But this is clearly the sort of thing he wants, and if he just keeps doing stuff like this and not like Tenet, I'm all in, all excited for it. More like this.
The conspiracy thriller is a step in the direction toward a horror film. Maybe that's
could be.
Maybe we can just drag him over there.
He could
one step at a time.
A Reptilians film.
That's true.
Christopher Nolan's They Live.
Yes.
Coming soon to Framework, also our John Carpenter's They Live episode.
Yeah, probably after this, actually. I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Be rife with comparisons to Oppenheimer and probably to Barbie, too.
Weird. Mm-hmm. All right. That's who we are. Thank you for joining us, Tor. A pleasure, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Again soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, rate and review. Tell your friends about the podcast and how good it is. Thank you for listening.
Rate and review is the easy thing. Rating is really, you press one button. A review is one sentence, but it would mean the world to me. It would make my week. So go ahead and do that.
And that's that. Do we have a fun Oppenheimer-esque quote?
Fuselage.